In the quiet corner of Kennel 12 at Riverside Animal Shelter, two unlikely friends pressed their warm bodies together through the chain-link fence that separated their small concrete spaces. Bailey, a golden retriever mix with one clouded eye from an old injury, gently nuzzled against Chester, a scrappy black and white border collie whose hind legs trembled from a condition that made walking difficult. What shelter staff didn't know was that these two dogs had been doing this every single night for 8 months, finding comfort in each other's presence when the world felt impossibly lonely. Little did anyone realize that their unbreakable bond would soon change not just their own lives, but the hearts of an entire community. Dr. Sarah Chen had been the head veterinarian at Riverside Animal Shelter for 3 years, and she had seen enough heartbreak to last several lifetimes. Every morning, she walked past the long rows of kennels filled with dogs whose eyes held the same question: will today be the day someone chooses me? But Bailey and Chester's case weighed particularly heavy on her heart. Bailey had been surrendered by an elderly man who could no longer care for him after losing his vision in one eye to an untreated infection. Chester had been found abandoned in a parking lot, his neurological condition making him shake uncontrollably whenever he tried to run or play like other dogs. Week after week, potential adopters would pause at their kennels, their faces lighting up momentarily before doubt crept in. Bailey's medical needs seemed too daunting for families wanting a healthy pet. Chester's disability made people worry about veterinary bills and special care. But what broke Dr. Chen's heart most was watching how the two dogs would pace anxiously whenever separated, refusing to eat until they could see each other again. The shelter's policy was clear though: dogs were housed individually, and adoptions happened one at a time. Everything changed on a gray October morning when 10-year-old Emma Rodriguez walked into the shelter clutching her father's hand. Emma had been born with a hearing impairment that required hearing aids, and after months of begging, her parents had finally agreed to let her pick out a companion. Miguel Rodriguez, a construction worker who had been saving every extra dollar for months, watched his daughter's face as she walked past kennel after kennel without showing interest. Then Emma stopped dead in her tracks at Kennel 12. She stood perfectly still, watching Bailey and Chester pressed against their adjoining fence, and something in her expression changed completely. Through her basic sign language, she told her father that these two dogs looked like they were taking care of each other, just like her older brother Carlos always took care of her at school when other kids didn't understand why she needed special help. Dr. Chen approached the family, expecting to have the same conversation she'd had dozens of times about why adopting special needs pets required careful consideration. Instead, Miguel surprised her by asking detailed questions about both dogs' conditions. As a man who had worked his entire life despite a back injury that never quite healed right, he understood something about pushing forward when your body doesn't cooperate perfectly. The evaluation process typically took a few days, but Emma insisted on visiting Bailey and Chester every afternoon after school for 2 weeks. She would sit cross-legged in front of their kennels, reading books aloud even though she couldn't hear her own voice clearly. Something magical happened during those visits. Chester, who usually shook nervously around strangers, began wagging his tail the moment he saw Emma approaching. Bailey, who had grown withdrawn and depressed over the months, started pressing his nose against the fence whenever she arrived. Dr. Chen found herself documenting something she had never seen before. When Emma read to them, both dogs would settle down completely, their breathing synchronized, their eyes focused intently on her face. Chester's trembling would stop almost entirely, and Bailey's good eye would track every movement of her hands as she signed words while speaking. The breakthrough came during Emma's 6th visit. She had convinced her father to bring her older brother Carlos, a patient teenager who had learned advanced sign language to communicate better with his sister. As Carlos interpreted Emma's words for the dogs, something extraordinary happened. Emma signed that she wished the two dogs could stay together because they were best friends, just like she and Carlos were best friends. At that moment, as if understanding every word, Bailey and Chester did something they had never done before in front of humans. They pressed their faces together through the fence and Chester gently licked Bailey's clouded eye, while Bailey rested his chin protectively over Chester's trembling back legs. The simple gesture of love and acceptance between two imperfect creatures brought tears to everyone's eyes. Miguel Rodriguez made a decision that surprised even himself. Despite the financial strain, despite never having owned pets before, despite all the practical concerns, he told Dr. Chen that his family wanted to adopt both dogs together. He had watched his daughter find kinship with these animals who, like her, faced daily challenges that others might see as limitations. But he also saw what Emma saw, that sometimes the most beautiful bonds form between souls who understand what it means to be a little different. The adoption process took another month of home visits, veterinary consultations, and preparation. Dr. Chen worked with local pet supply stores to provide discounted medical care and supplies. The shelter waived half the adoption fees. Word spread through the community about the Rodriguez family's commitment to giving these special dogs a chance, and donations poured in to help with initial medical expenses. On the day Bailey and Chester left the shelter together, something unprecedented happened. Instead of the usual anxious whimpering that accompanied departures, both dogs seemed to sense this was different. As they walked toward the Rodriguez family's truck, Chester's legs moved steadier than they had in months, and Bailey's tail wagged with an energy staff hadn't seen since his arrival. But the most remarkable moment came as Miguel lifted Chester into the truck bed where a soft blanket waited. Bailey jumped up beside his friend, and the two dogs did something that made everyone stop and stare. They wrapped around each other in what could only be described as a hug, Chester's front paws draped over Bailey's neck while Bailey gently groomed Chester's ears. It was as if they understood that their dream of staying together had finally come true. 6 months later, Dr. Chen received an update that restored her faith in the power of love to heal. Emma had taught Bailey to respond to visual hand signals, compensating perfectly for his limited vision. Chester's condition had improved dramatically with regular gentle exercise and the confidence that came from never being alone. Most amazingly, Emma's own confidence had blossomed as she became these dogs' advocate and interpreter, teaching other kids at school about how differences make friendships stronger, not weaker. The Rodriguez family sent a photo that Dr. Chen kept on her desk, Emma curled up reading a book with Bailey's head in her lap and Chester stretched across both of them, all three perfectly content in their imperfect, beautiful world. Sometimes the most powerful healing happens when broken pieces find other broken pieces that fit together perfectly. Bailey and Chester's story reminds us that love doesn't seek perfection, it seeks connection, understanding, and the courage to believe that everyone deserves a chance at happiness. If this story touched your heart, please like this video to help us share more stories of hope and second chances. Subscribe to Pure Kindness Stories to join our community of believers in the transformative power of compassion. And most importantly, share this story with someone who needs to remember that the most beautiful dreams often come true in ways we never expected, when hearts recognize hearts and love finds a way.